And of course, when you hear that tune, you know it's time for Lisa's Changing Perceptions right here on 21.6 The Net, 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And today we do say thank you to BremerTeam.com, the Bremer Team, Keller Williams, North Shore West, 847-456-6334 for their generous support in bringing you Lisa's Changing Perceptions. BremerTeam.com, they bring families home. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, Pete. How are you?
I am fine and dandy, and how about yourself?
I am tired, but I'm good. The full moon has gotten to me today, so I'm a little bit wingy, so everybody be prepared. I'm a little bit off this morning. But I'm Lisa with Lisa's Changing Perceptions. Are we echoing?
No, actually, we're not echoing, but you are hearing yourself over the studio monitor because we had that plugged in. I can unplug it if you like.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to make sure everything was going okay.
No, yeah, everything is fine.
Sorry.
It's fantastic.
We're such a professional outfit here.
Yeah, first day on the job for both of us. Yeah.
I'm Lisa with Lisa's Changing Perceptions. I am a self-empowerment coach and hypnotherapist and also a certified practitioner in NLP. I come to you every Sunday morning. If you would like to join the show, there's a link in the comments line that Pete places, and you can actually be here on screen with me if you'd like to chit chat, but you're also welcome to comment in the comment line. If you would like to get a hold of me to book an appointment or a session, you can reach me at lisaschangingperceptions.com, lisaschangingperceptions@gmail.com. On Facebook under Lisa's Changing Perceptions. You can also call or text at 262-573-7055. Or as always, you can reach me through 216thenet.com, and Pete will make sure that I receive all questions, comments, or notifications that you may send. And today, before I forget, because I'm going to mention it again another time, I am actually on spring break from working at the school this week. So to keep my days busy, because I like to stay busy, I am offering half price for past life regressions. That is not for standard sessions. It's just for past life regression sessions. So anybody who's been wanting to try it, think it sounds like fun, let me know. We can book it up this week. I can do those remotely as well. So you don't need to be here in the McHenry County area. But if you've been wanting to give it a try and it's been something of interest to you, I thought maybe I'd fill up the week with maybe a few. I'm only having limited sessions, for the record. I'm not literally doing the whole week. I have regular clients as well.
For the record.
Yes, for the record.
Okay.
But if you want to do something fun that you've been wanting to try, maybe had some interest in it, and I'm letting you know that this week only, Monday through Friday, this week only, I'm doing half price for past life regression. So feel free to get a hold of me for that. So today we are going to chat about life choices and secondary gain, because it's been a comment that's been made on the shows multiple times, and people have asked about it. So I thought I'd kind of get into it a little bit today. But first, I'm going to let everybody know about this full moon thing. The full moon does affect me. The new moon also affects me. And I laugh because, and I just saw a meme about it the other day, and it was true. People say, "Oh my God, that's so crazy. That's the weird stuff, blah, 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 that the full moon can possibly affect you." People, the full moon affects the entire ocean. You are 70% water. Yes, it will affect. It will affect your mojo.
So we're all a little moist.
Yeah. That's nice, Pete.
Poor choice. I enjoy that word because so many people hate it. That's why I said that. Just for fun.
Did you receive secondary gain of self-satisfaction by that, Pete?
I entertained myself. So that was
there you go. There's your
gain.
secondary gain.
Ted Legal says, "Good morning, everyone."
Good morning, Ted.
Ted says, "Love your show." Shayna says, "Good morning." Shayna says, "No one who has ever been in customer service will deny the effects of a foreman." Foreman? Full moon? I think autocorrect got her there. The full moon got her.
You know what? And either will OB nurses, because I remember when I went in with my daughter, she was a month early. And when I showed up at the emergency room, the nurse said, "Oh my God, it must be a full moon." And I said, "Why?" She said, "We are so packed. People are just showing up, and they're early, and they're uncomfortable, and they're going quick." And so, yeah, nurses will not either. So yes, the full moon does affect us. I am not an astrologer. I do not study astrology. I know people that I trust that do, and I follow them. But this full moon in particular seems to be affecting a lot of people because, in case anybody's interested, I'll throw this in. It is in regards to relationships, all aspects of relationships, whether they be romantic, friendships, work relationships, or what have you. And this one is about stirring up the things to show us what is toxic and what is healthy in our life, and having to make genuine choices in doing that. And I'm bringing that up because it actually kind of goes with the life choices and secondary gain topic. But that is what this full moon's about. So if you have found yourself being more frustrated, noticing things that maybe you've brushed off in the past and for some reason they're bothering you right now, there's a reason for that. And it's meant for us to have the opportunity to kind of ditch the toxic if we choose. And that's, again, we're going to go into the life choices, because secondary gain means that our unconscious mind is meant to protect us. Our unconscious mind is meant to keep us safe. So when we repeat negative choices or bad behaviors, and by negative choices, that is not a judgment call. By negative choices, I mean by when we continue patterns of behavior that cause us difficulty within our life. So it's not a judgment issue, because what Pete might think is a negative choice and I might think is a negative choice isn't necessarily the same thing. It's reflective within us. But when we repeat patterns that cause us discomfort, that cause us stress, that cause us anxiety, that cause us difficulty, that cause us drama, whatever it is, there has to be a secondary gain behind that, or you wouldn't repeat it. And people don't understand that, because a large portion of the time, secondary gain is unconscious. So you're unaware of why you're repeating the pattern. But at some point in life, your unconscious mind said, hey, when I did this before, I received this. And this is what I'm searching for. So I'm going to keep repeating that. Or you got the illusion of it, even in some cases. A high percentage of the time, it is chronic illness is a secondary gain that people don't realize that they're using or that they're doing, where they will repeat a pattern of chronic illness. My instructor gave the best example, or one of the best examples of it is, she had a client that, or forgive me, it was not a client, it was somebody she worked with. And she said this woman was constantly sick and needing some kind of surgery. Always. She was in the hospital over and over and over again, and she didn't know her very well. So she kind of asked around, is she okay? What's going on with her? And they just said, I don't know. She's always sick. She's constantly in the hospital. And so I will tell you that once you start getting into this line of work, you are the epitome of the observer of people, just to understand. And she said she started watching, and she went up to the hospital a couple times while she was in the hospital, kind of wanting to get to know her and see what was going on with her. And what she realized is that each time the woman was in the hospital, her children and grandchildren came in from out of town to see her. And the rest of the year, they were very busy. They had their own lives. They had their own thing going on. But if she was ill and having surgery,
then
she got
to see her kids. Okay.
Now, the disillusionment is, why would somebody hurt themselves? She wasn't doing it on purpose. Our body does respond to our thought process. So our body will respond to, when I am ill and I'm in the hospital, I receive pleasure from seeing my family.
See, that's almost a psychotic sort of break there.
Well, no, because that would be conscious. That would be more conscious than unconscious. In this situation, she's completely unaware of what she's doing, but her body is responding to her internal need.
Okay, so it's not an intentional.
No, not at all.
I shall do this because I will receive this
Correct.
reward. Okay, which would be a psychopathic type of behavior.
Correct. This is totally unconscious. She's unaware of it. Her body's actually becoming ill.
Okay. Oh, by the way, let's see. It's I hope I'm saying this correctly. Natanya Morales says, "Happy Sunday." Happy Sunday.
Good morning.
Natanya.
She was on the show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and
she videoed it.
Shayna, Shayna says, how do we become more aware when we do this type of thing, or when we do this?
By being brave enough, and I do say brave enough because it can be a very scary thing to do. When you see yourself repeating a pattern that is causing you those things, and we tend to say to ourselves, why the hell am I doing this? And then we do it again. But to truly go in and say, why am I doing this? What am I receiving? Because if you're not receiving something, you wouldn't do it. It's as simple as that. You're not going to repeat a pattern that doesn't bring you some kind of benefit. So you continue to do it, whether it be, I know people and have met people and talked to people about this on many different aspects. I had somebody with chronic migraine. Hospitals, doctors, and again, I am not saying that every person that has an illness or an issue has this. I'm just saying it's something to consider for yourself to make that determination.
Yeah.
And I said, when do these migraines tend to come on? And they repeated and repeated, and there was a very similar story. Their children demanded a lot from them. Their children had not become and been raised to be incredibly self-sufficient. So the children would come and bombard, and when the word no was given, guilt was brought in, and they would be traumatized by their past mistakes as a parent and so on and so forth. So by having a chronic migraine, guess what? There's a reason to lay in the darkness in the bedroom and be left alone. There's a reason I can't do this. There's a reason I can't help. Are they aware of that's what's happening? Absolutely not. I don't believe that. But at some point in their life, they were asked something of that was difficult or going to be a strain, and it probably stressed them to the point of a migraine, where the stress came in, and all of a sudden everybody left them alone. So unconsciously, the decision's made of, hey, that worked. So each time I feel this way, if I have this migraine come on, I have a reason to lay in the dark and everyone leave me alone. That can be a very common thing. Also, self-sabotage for things like that. Because if we're afraid to move forward in something, or we're afraid to go ahead and do something, we have a project or something that we're struggling with, if we don't feel well, we have a very pleasant and acceptable excuse why we haven't been able to complete that yet. Why we haven't been able to do that. So
is that more common for people who have a hard time saying no?
Well, the majority of the world has a hard time saying no to certain aspects of their life. Yeah. So, I'm fairly outspoken, but there are certain people in my life I really struggle to say no to. And when I say yes to that stresses me, I've had to stop and go, where's your secondary gain? Why does this person in particular cause you to not be able to say no? Because people who know me even on the air know I'm pretty outspoken. I say it how it is, and I'm not super easily intimidated anymore. I did used to be, but
really
but learning,
that's surprising to me
when I was young. But learning that caused so much harm made me stop and go, wait a minute, why are you allowing this? And fight. And I'm one of those persons, I don't go instigating an argument or a fight. But if you push me in a corner, the world will know I was there. If you try to lock me in a corner, the world will know I was there. So I don't go around looking for it, but I also have learned to have a strong spine and to face things. But there are people in my life that I do struggle to say no to. They're becoming fewer and fewer. And I don't mean no in a negative way. I mean no in a self-sacrificing way, meaning that now I will stop and say, if I really can't do that, I'm just going to have to say no. If it's somebody that means something to me, I'll offer an alternative. If I have an alternative, hey, no, I can't do that right now, but I could do X, Y, Z, and offer them an alternative. But there were reasons that I couldn't say no to certain aspects. And sometimes it's not one thing. Sometimes it's multiple things. Sometimes it's chasing approval. Sometimes it's seeking redemption. That's a big one. If I know somebody who completely self-sabotages their mental health, financial health, emotional health, physical health, seeking redemption.
Ted says, I have people like that in my life.
Yes, sadly we all do. Even the most outspoken of us have somebody in our life that, we allow to doormat us a little bit.
And Shayna has become such a regular on your show. She says, in quotes, if the world tries to put me in the corner, they're going to know I'm there. Classic.
Yes.
So she's getting to know you pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just, but that's a developed trait. Avoiding confrontation, kind of, but also learning that self-worth. I mean, there's a value in learning your self-worth, and it's saying, I don't need to confront you, and I don't need to be confrontational in order to prove I can take care of myself. But kindness does not make me a doormat. And that has been something that I've had to learn over the years and years and years. And it was a long and slow process. But people seeking redemption also can do this. And then people say, but if they're not receiving the redemption, why would they continue to do it? Well, I do know a situation, like you said, where somebody sabotages their mental, physical, emotional, and financial well-being seeking redemption. And do they receive the redemption? No. But what they receive is manipulation, where the people who they're trying to get redemption from feed them little pieces of it. So you chase it. You get that feeling and you chase it. You want that feeling again, and you feel so close. And sadly, there are people who use that and manipulate it to their own advantage. But some people are seeking redemption. We have to go in and ask ourselves, what is our secondary gain to this? What are we receiving from this? What are we trying to repair through this? What are we protecting ourselves from by doing it? Because now on the other hand, secondary gain is not always negative. Secondary gain can also be positive. So I'll throw myself on the table for this one. Why have I made choices that have been very difficult, and why have I sacrificed a lot, and why do I do all this internal digging? Because the secondary gain or outcome for me is the career that I want, that makes me happy, that makes me feel good, that I'm good at. So this to me is part of it. So the secondary gain to me is the positive. The work towards it can be a little bit negative.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always mean secondary gain is not always negative. So when we want to look at secondary gain, we want to put it in the proper perspective. Addiction is another one. Secondary gain. What's our secondary gain? Go ahead.
Shayna says, I have difficulty stepping away from people when I think there is untapped potential. Help me find my secondary gain.
Who didn't notice your untapped potential in your life? Or when did you not notice your untapped potential in your life? Who made you feel less than? Who made you feel of not value? When did you try to shine and no one saw?
So she's trying to help people with all this, where she sees all that, and because someone didn't see it in her, she wants them to know,
to show her value, to express her value.
That
because the odds are, if she's repeating it, she has also found people within that that she has seen their potential, and she has truly been a blessing to them.
Yeah. And
they have seen their potential and improved or helped in whatever way too. Am I assuming that correctly? Shayna, feel free to correct me. So it's kind of chasing the rabbit. That's also part of being an empath, because, and it's another thing I was going to talk about today, is being an empath. When we're empathic, and there's different levels of being empathic, and we talked about the difference last week, I think it was, between the difference of being empathetic and being an empath. An empath truly feels the potential. One of the people I have a hard time saying no to is exactly for that reason. I can feel their potential, and sadly or not sadly, it depends on how you look at it, I was actually shown their life chart to help me understand, why am I feeling this when they're behaving like this? WTF?
And Shayna says no correction needed. You're dead on there.
So Shayna, forgive me. Seeking self-approval within the approval of another is a secondary gain. So when someone else says, thank you so much for all you did for me, you're receiving a piece of what you're searching for. Mm. The hard part and cliche of it, and it's much more difficult than the cliche says, is that you have to find that for yourself. Nobody else is ever going to fill it. Other people can help, though. And that's where I say that's a cliche, because other people can help you. You can't tell me that anybody who conquered something, yes, they had to find it within themselves to have the strength and the self-worth and all of the list of things we don't need to go over to bring that up. But at some point, one or more people said to them, I see you. Somebody encouraged them. Somebody was kind. Somebody offered something. Somebody did something that kind of ignited that fire. And that, because it's very rare, very, very, very rare that somebody doesn't get a hand offering for a blessing to be offered that type of thing. Now, whether they choose to see it or not is up to them. But again, then we got to look at their secondary gain. If somebody's handing you the silver platter of, I'm here, I'll help you, I support you, I see you, I'll stand by you while you go through this, I'll sit with you in the darkness, and they're saying, no, 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 no. Okay, what is your secondary gain from being miserable? Because there is a secondary gain to it, or you wouldn't continue to repeat it. And there are people who choose to be miserable. Is it that they like to sit and be miserable? No. But maybe there's a secondary gain to it. Maybe self-harm, self-hurting emotionally, says, I'm going to pay my penance. Maybe they were taught religion, maybe, and I'm going to pay my penance here before I go there. That can be a very common belief. If you believe that when we pass, we're punished, and you believe that you've been a bad person, some people believe that I will pay my penance here. I will suffer here. I will acknowledge all of it here. I will pay all my penance here so that maybe I'll be blessed when I pass. That is to me, very horribly sad and scary one.
That is sad.
But that is a mindset that can be, they can chase it because, okay, I'm going to suffer enough. I'm going to suffer enough. Some people are in so much pain emotionally, mentally, and they don't know how to express how they're feeling, or maybe they're embarrassed to discuss how they're feeling or what happened to them that caused that feeling. But by being that way, other people offer them comfort.
Shayna notes that as martyr energy. Is that what that would be? Is that something else?
I mean, it can be if we want to label it that way, but that makes it sound like somebody's intentionally an ass. And I don't believe that that's usually the case. We've talked about this before. You have asshole moments and you have assholes, right. Yes. But I don't believe that the majority of people behave that way on purpose. I've talked to too many people, and I am one of those people that for some reason, like you talked about on your show the other day, and I was laughing because I've been in the grocery store checkout line and had people like tell me their whole life story. And
I don't know why people do that to me.
It's the empath in you. It's the comfort energy.
I get that all the people will come and just people I don't even know will come and just all of a sudden start sharing. And and last week was really kind of weird for me.
Well, the new moon or the full moon is really setting people up. People just kept
coming in and saying, "Hey, what do you think of?" Or did you see who did? It was just
it's the comfort energy. And so when people become uncomfortable, they search for comfort. So people who have, especially empaths, who have a comforting, welcoming, loving energy, what are you going to seek? So now it's a very uncomfortable time, so we're going to seek comfort.
Tend overall, most of the time, I'm a fairly mellow, calm. I try, and now it's become almost just a normal state for me to most of the time find joy in a moment because it's much easier than being angry. I can get angry, I can get frustrated, I can get really annoyed, but it takes a lot of energy, and I just don't like expending it. And I used to. Well, I used to expend it like crazy, but now I don't. By the way, Ted says my wife has a hard time expressing her feelings to anyone who wasn't a part of her life as a child. That's interesting.
Well,
But
yeah, I would want to dig into that a little bit.
yeah,
I just want to get in there.
yeah, I just
But see,
don't
that's
like
a personal choice that you've made. There's some people that prefer anger.
I don't.
And anger is exhausting.
It vary.
And it's very physically draining on your body.
Yeah.
But some people prefer anger because underneath anger, what have I always said? Just below anger is hurt and fear.
Yeah.
So if we take away the anger, we have to actually acknowledge our hurt and our fears. And to some people, that's scary. Some people have lived lives or had experiences that is horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. And then even worse yet, when you really start digging to your truth, there's a scary, scary question that you ask yourself when you really dive in there. And I've asked myself more than once, and I have cried and I have kicked and I have had my little tantrum over it is, and what role did you play in that?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's well, I don't want to let yes, I speak on the radio. Ted says in follow up to his statement a moment ago, especially since her mom passed away. And then Shayna, to what we were just talking about here, says, so much energy expended with anger. You are so right. And about a good, man, it's got to be 10, 11, 12 years ago, my early 40s, I went through a portion in life where I just had to look in the mirror and say, do I really want to keep living like I am, just so angry about stuff? And had to really examine, okay, why does this make me angry? And then I had to get into the pain, the hurt, and all that kind of stuff. And then just ultimately let it go.
But that's a realization
doesn't matter anymore.
That you had to come to when your secondary gain was becoming unseen.
Yeah.
So that's when that'll change, is when it's a perfect example, actually, because at some point prior to that, you were receiving a secondary gain from that anger. Something was being approved from that anger. And eventually that disappeared, or it outweighed. The secondary gain did not become better
than the anger.
Right.
Yeah.
So you let go. So in that, and that's why I don't like to call people a martyr or whatever. You can say you're having a martyr behavior, or what you're doing is a martyr behavior, but to call somebody these things, you're not all the time. But the secondary gain became less effective. So unconsciously, your unconscious went, hey, this isn't working anymore. We have to do something different. So if we can have empathy that sometimes people just aren't there yet, their secondary gain is still there. Sometimes people have a surrounding, people around them, that secondary gain is still valuable. I know somebody who actually said, when I'm in this situation, my mental, physical, and emotional health becomes so much better. I'm so much happier. And once they realize that happiness, they literally destruct that situation.
Wow.
Because it's very uncomfortable and scary to be happy, because happiness is something you could lose. Where if you stay miserable and you keep yourself around the people who make sure you stay miserable, that's safe. You don't have anything to lose. You can count on being miserable, so there's nothing good to lose. And it doesn't make sense to some people, but to the person who has experienced certain things, it does make sense to them.
I can kind of get that. And now Shayna asks, could anger be used as a tool to keep control of your space and energy?
Anger can be used as a tool to keep your vulnerabilities protected.
Mm.
So to keep your space, why would you need to keep your space if you had boundaries and you had self-esteem and you did your self-work? But if you're afraid of your vulnerabilities being seen, or you're afraid of people entering your space that are uncomfortable and you don't, or you're afraid of drama coming into your life. I mean, there's a million other things. If those things are fears, then anger will keep that away. I actually used to use anger to avoid dating.
Really?
I would find a reason to nitpick something minor and come across as a big B because I was horrified of dating. I was horrified of dating. So Those are all, anger can be a protective mechanism when you're afraid of your vulnerability and fear. When you want to protect your vulnerability and fear. It'll keep people away. Some people use anger as a deflection of their own self. What would be the word? I don't want to say loathing because that sounds so extreme, but if I'm angry and I make you too intimidated to challenge me, you won't come challenge me. Because if you did come challenge me, I might lose, I might break, I might feel like the loser that I am. Hence, sit in a bar with an angry person who's had a few cocktails. They're going to become incredibly guarded, and they know their vulnerabilities are down, their walls are down, so they're going to become very angry.
Shayna just went ding, ding, ding with a big surprise face emoji. So, ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, so so Lisa just rang your bell there, huh?
So
that's funny.
Remembering when somebody's incredibly angry, that what they're doing is deflecting off a lot of pain and fear.
Yeah.
Because underneath that anger is hurt and fear. And that doesn't mean we have to take people's crap. But if we can have an understanding of that, it can also wound us less.
Right.
Because we can all say we don't care what anybody thinks. But there are certain people in our lives or certain statements that can be made that we all have a, ooh, that hurt, that stung, or we think about or kind of sticks with us. So if we can understand it from a different perspective, then it's not going to wound us as much.
And I will say that I am now more quick to openly acknowledge a wounding or emotionally painful experience.
But like that came from dumping the anger and self-reflection.
Because if someone says something to me and it's dead on, and I go, oh yeah, ooh, paper cut. Wow, you just poured the alcohol right on that sucker, man. But if I'm quick to look at that and go, then it passes very quickly. I've noticed,
right? Because we release it, we let it go. That's it. The things that are hurting us are the things that we're keeping down in the darkness. Our shame underneath the fear and hurt is usually shame and guilt. So oftentimes the things that we feel guilt and shame about, we shouldn't. But society or family or whatever it is has made us think that there's something wrong. So the only way to correct that is to dig it up. Once you bring something up to the light, it's no longer a stranger.
Well, Ted says, wow, you just hit the nail on the head.
Oh, it's the human reality. We just happen to live in a society that says, be tough, be strong, smile even when you're not happy, fake it till you make it. I call bullshit on all of that. Are there times that I come in and I smile at work when I'm not in a great mood? Well, sure, that's my job. I can't walk in and, vomit anger on everybody as I walk the door.
No, because nobody will want you around, and
right.
You got to do your job.
The problem comes when we use the fake it till you make it, the smile even when you don't mean it, when we're within ourselves.
Shayna says, looks like I'm making an appointment. And in case you need to, we'll go ahead and just pop that right up there real quick. You can reach Lisa at lisaschangingperceptions.com or shoot her an email, lisa@lisaschangingperceptions.com. Or you can even give her a call to make that appointment at 262-573-7055. And there you go.
That was beautifully put, Pete.
It was, wasn't it? I should get a job on the radio announcing things.
But when it comes to our life choices in secondary game, we make life choices on purpose. That does not mean that they are rational or make sense. We need to accept that. And here's the truth. I know this will shock everyone. We all make stupid choices sometimes. We all do. We all do something, if we looked back on it, we would not be super proud the world would see.
Oh.
We all make choices that harmed another human being. We all make these choices. And by having to hide them and bury them is how we conceal them, is how we drag them around with all this baggage our whole lives. And if people would learn to say, You know what? What I did, I'm sorry. Not that it's justified, but what I was feeling was, and I didn't realize it was going to hurt you. Or maybe, and I did realize it was going to hurt you. And in the moment, I was angry and I didn't care. And I'm genuinely sorry. Guess what? That holds no more power. Except an apology without change is just manipulation.
Yeah.
So you have to mean it and say, you know what? I've learned this about myself. But people are so afraid of being vulnerable or admitting a fault or what they consider a weakness. And I defy that, because when I get so teary, people see me get teary on the air. I'm very emotionally sensitive and I get teary. And that took my husband's death. I was not like that before that. I appreciated life differently after his death. So I was never like that before. I was one of the people, don't show him your weakness. And my argument to that is,
Ted says, and another, you hit the nail on the head. You're just pounding the wood all together for Ted today. So you're building him something. I don't know.
The argument I have against that is, the question to ask yourself is, if being vulnerable and expressing emotions and compassion puts you in such a place of risk, what is weakness? Are you weak or are you brave? By offering yourself and the world something uncommon, something unrare, stepping outside the box. What is braver? What is weaker? Is it weaker to hide and bury it and be miserable? Or is it weaker to show vulnerability, compassion, and emotion? So we use that kind of as an excuse. Now, there are situations, if I'm getting mugged or somebody is knocking me behind my car, trying to grab my purse behind my car, I'm not going to show vulnerability and compassion. Okay. I'm going to battle. So there's a difference, but I'm talking about in our everyday life. If we could offer to the world what we wished we would receive, there would be so much less chaos. Here's the reason I find we don't. What am I going to get out of it? Or there's not the instant gratification, or the person that you offer that to doesn't send it back. We are not responsible for what the other human being chooses to receive. We are responsible for what we as human beings offer. Now, I'm also going to call a falsehood on something where people say, you should always give and expect nothing. Bullshit.
Sorry. Now, I hear that a lot. And sometimes I do. I just want to give something just because but the thing is,
you receive something.
I receive something. I feel good about it. And, or I receive the smile from somebody else. I truly enjoy being able to make other people smile and or laugh. I love that. And that's a reward for me.
Are there other people who come into your life that offer the same to you?
Yeah.
So you receive.
Yeah. I received that.
Right.
Ted says, by the way,
that's where we get screwed up, is we expect the instant gratification of the person standing in front of us or the person in that situation. We don't understand that it does come back to us. It just comes back to us in other things. If you were constantly giving and constantly offering, and absolutely nobody in your life ever did anything decent for you, guess what you would eventually do? Stop. You would stop.
Yeah.
So all of you should give without expecting anything in return. Consciously, unconsciously, we would not do that.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily, again, it may very well not be the physical return or receive back. But for me, it's just that internal receipt. Yeah, it's the emotional receipt. Ted says, by the way, you are filling in a lot of blank moments in my life I have had this past year, probably from all the hard times I have had. He then says, wow, great point to what we were just talking about. It's surprising. Ted, I'm with you. I often have epiphanies during Lisa's show. My secondary gain of producing Lisa's Changing Perceptions every 9 a.m. on 216thenet.com. A little plug there because we have to. Well, we don't have to, but because we want to, is my secondary gain is I learn a lot about myself from producing this show. It's amazing.
Well, thank you guys. That's nice. That is why I do it. And it's not to say that I know everything. I will always reiterate to anybody who's confused. The reason that I have understanding and compassion for these things is I got my ass kicked really, really, really bad in life and went, all right, we have two choices. We can keep doing this or we can figure it out. And I did, in fact, do it for another human being. That's a fact. I went back to school. I've told this story before, I've never intended on doing this for my living. It was not my purpose for going to school. It was to help a person who was in much pain. And the standard things weren't working. And they were in so much pain. So I went digging for resources. It's why I started to learn about holistics. I started to learn about holistics actually when my husband was sick and I was fighting with doctors a lot. So I don't sit here and ever, so anybody new listening, I never sit here and pretend I'm on some soapbox with all the answers or that I live some charmed life and look down on all of you with my superior education. No, my life at times is a friggin' cesspool. And I have just learned to swim through it versus drowned. That's the only difference.
People say that my life is a cesspool, but however, no matter in what form they appear, whether it's an actual cesspool because you're in a rural area or a city cesspool, cesspools are extremely necessary. We kind of need those to get all of the refuse out of the way. So a cesspool isn't necessarily a horrible thing.
Well, and to that, I mean, I will say there's two ways to play it. I have been through a lot of struggle and tragedy in my life. And there's two ways for me to look at that. I can be victim to it, which I was for a long time. Or I can go, okay, do you want to feel this way forever? What did you learn from it? And turn around and look, and what did I learn from each thing? And there's nothing in my life that people would look at as a struggle or a tragedy that I can't tell you, but the blessing I received within it was. But that's not something that just instantly occurred. That was truly getting to the point of, I don't want to live the rest of my life feeling this way. I don't want to live the rest of my life being miserable. I don't want to spend the rest of my life hating myself. I don't want to spend the rest of my life believing that life will never be good, that life will never be happy. Do I still have those moments? Absolutely. The only difference is I've learned how to pull them out of them faster. So it's not to say, and that's the other thing, it's another myth of society, where they say, well, I love this one. You can never be loved by anyone until you love yourself. Okay, cop out for not being kind to people.
I've said that very specifically. Well,
I don't agree
in a way, but the way I say it is, how would you expect someone to love you if you don't love yourself? You gotta, or respect yourself. But you can still be kind to people.
Well,
you can still be kind, gracious.
Have
thankful.
You never loved anybody with issues? Have you ever loved anybody with low self-esteem?
Oh, I love people with issues and self-esteem issues.
So it's a false statement.
So
how can you expect anybody to love you when you don't love yourself? Because they do. Because there's people in the world that are broken pieces fit.
But that's also a choice.
Right.
So I guess you just proved my statement wrong. Son of a bitch. All right, never mind. I'm going to shut up now.
Sometimes in the world.
But I still love myself.
Sometimes in the world, our broken pieces fit with another person's broken pieces. Now, does that mean that we should spend our lives miserable? No. But you know what? Even with all the things that I talk about, all the education that I've done, I learned as much from clients as clients learned from me. It's true. It's always an experience and a reflective type of a thing for me. with all of those things, I still have things about me that I don't like, that I'm still working on. There's some things about me that I know are just me. And it wouldn't have been my first choice, but I guess that's it. And I've had to learn to weigh and balance those, but everybody should. These cliches that society throws out, a lot of them are horseshit.
Well, yeah.
And it's a very easy cop out to not have to look at yourself or to not have to exert yourself for another human being.
But I think, though, if you love yourself, that means, too, that you're willing to take a look at the things that aren't necessarily what you feel are great about yourself. And then maybe also, you're proving my whole thought process on this wrong. So, okay, here we go.
That's my job.
Yeah. Okay, I love myself. I know that there are things about myself specifically that I really kind of still want to change that, and maybe do this a little different. But the willingness to do that comes from self-love. But then also loving other people with the faults that they have is something where you go, okay, hey, I know I'm not,
the willingness
perfect,
for that can come from self-love,
yeah.
But the willingness for that can also come from loving another human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because oftentimes people choose to change because the reflection they see with another human being, the reflection they see of themselves within another human being, is the reflection they choose to see. So that doesn't mean it's a false reflection always either. But there are people in the world that bring out the best in us because they see the best in us.
No, that's very true. That's very true.
That can help rise somebody up. Now, does that mean we have to take on every person like that? Absolutely not. Go ahead.
Shayna says, I tend to race people to the finish line to take as much responsibility as I can. It's not noble, but more efficient for me. That way I can address and change without depending on someone changing their behaviors. Feeling intent and choosing a compassionate response isn't everyone's go-to. Lack of self-love drives a lot of insecurity, cliche or not. You learn to accept your flaws and all, so you can love other imperfect people.
And that may very well be true, but the question that I would turn around and ask of that, just to clarify for yourself and feel strong within it, is that truly the reason that you do it, or is it to avoid disappointment of another human being? Is it avoid someone else letting you down? Someone else not coming through for us? Oftentimes, I have taken responsibility for things that I played a role in, but I took the biggest chunk of the fault because I didn't want to feel what it felt like to have the other person not. Because in a way, it would be rejection. By them not taking accountability, it would have stabbed my areas of lack of value. It would have jabbed my areas of abandonment. It would have jabbed my areas of rejection. So it's easier because I love this. I'm strong enough to carry it. Yeah, horseshit. That's another excuse we give ourselves when we don't want to avoid rejection. It's easier to say, I'm at fault, I'll do this, because we save the drama, we save the rejection, we save the disappointment. We save maybe that we looked at somebody better than they really were. A lot of times we actually really even know we're doing that. But then within that, why do we continue to look at somebody better than they're truly behaving? Either you can truly see their potential and for some reason you can't let that go, or possibly we don't want to admit we were ever wrong in how we saw somebody in the first place anyway. So do we want to hear about it? Or maybe it's somebody that the whole world told us was bad. And we said, no, you're wrong. And then we realized, well, maybe they were right. And now my ego is going to get kicked if I have to admit that. There's a million different reasons why we do what we do. I see a lot of times with parents with their children with this. They will continue to make excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse for their children. When within that, the truth is...
I'm sorry. Shayna says, this is brutal, Lisa. Dang.
Sorry.
And accurate.
It comes from my heart, though. It comes from my heart to truly help. Because if we don't continue to make excuses for the children and their poor choices, then at some point we have to see what is our reflection within their poor choices.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that every parent is at fault for everything their children do?
No.
Your children, here's the reality check. Your children are exposed to things outside of your home. Your children have brains that make choices as well. Now, does a better suited foundation at home with a better example cause a stronger boundary and stronger, better choices? Sure, it does. Does a stronger foundation at home or an open and loving home allow a child to come and reflect and ask questions and ask for guidance or advice? Absolutely, it does. But there are times that isn't always available, or there's times that we are examples of really shitty parents. We're just people. And sometimes we're sucky people. And we've given those examples. Here's the blessing I will give every parent who has now a grown child, teenager, or adult, who constantly blames them for every single thing wrong in their life. I offer you this. You're welcome. You're welcome for making you intelligent enough, self-sufficient enough, self-reflective enough that you are able to understand my mistakes, therefore not repeat them. You're welcome. There. I hear it all the time. Kid, my mom this, my dad this, I remember when. Well, that's perfect. Because sometimes in the world, our blessing is the example of what we don't want to do. I'm glad I could be yours. Enough. And it's these types of things, these guilt manipulations and things that keep the cycle going. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so our secondary game becomes, again, why do we continue doing it? Because our secondary game is to relieve ourselves from our own self-reflection of where we might have created a monster. Where we might have made our mistakes. Does that make the problem better? No, we reinforce it.
Yeah.
We reinforce bad behavior. We reinforce poor choices. We reinforce victimhood. We reinforce blame. And we create children that go out into the world thinking nothing's ever their freaking fault. And guess what? Sometimes all of us have moments in time when we are, everybody get your pen, at fault. Ta-da!
Now, there are some very specific parenting moments I do truly wish that I could take back and erase and redo.
I don't know that any parent couldn't say that.
However, I do know that, and I did take opportunity to, as the kids got older, to go back and say, hey, I remember this time, and I'm sorry if that was a really bad experience for you. I did what I did with the emotional state I had at the time. And the response was actually surprising, which was, well,
it was a positive response.
Yeah,
right?
It was a positive response. I didn't expect that.
And doing that is twofold, because it relieves you of carrying that guilt or that regret, right? Because guilt and regret are uncomfortable. But you also just offered your children a great blessing, the example of accountability. So as they go through life and have relationships, whether they be romantic, parental, work, whatever, they just saw somebody that they respect, right? Take accountability for their own behaviors and actions and emotions. And so now they feel safer to take accountability for their own actions and emotions. When we don't realize the truth within that guilt and that regret is when, sadly, it can be twisted into manipulation. Because if we say that and what we're doing is we're not really self-reflecting and take accountability, but we're begging for forgiveness, that can be a very evil tool in the wrong hands.
And I was not looking for forgiveness.
No, I understand that, but I'm making that clear to people, because some people will say, I'm going to go do that because this person will then forgive me. There's a difference between I need to bring up this regret and this guilt to place that on the table and rid myself of it, And how the other person responds is however they choose to respond. I'm doing this for me. I'm bringing this out on the table. I no longer wish to carry this with me. This isn't something I wish to have in my luggage. My luggage is too heavy. I want to get rid of this.
And I just wanted them to know that, hey, I know now that I did what I did with what I had to work with at the time. But
that's self-reflective release. That's different.
Yeah. And I'm sorry if that impacted you very negatively.
And that's why I want to make it very clear to people that that's different than doing that to plead for forgiveness. Because there are people in the world who will take somebody pleading for forgiveness and use it as a tool to then twist them into a new pretzel. Manipulate. Right.
And they didn't do that at all. They were just... They were
right, well, and that's a beautiful response.
Yeah, it sucked, but at the same time, they were like, no, but that
right.
It wasn't near as damaging as I thought in my mind as I thought it had been.
That's the beauty of it. The majority of the time, it's not.
Yeah.
Our creation in our mind of what it's going to be is way scarier, hence anxiety.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it was not it was in no way, shape, or form an abuse. I yelled at my boys for something that they had. I learned about something years after the fact that my boys had, when we would leave them home alone with our daughter, they would be a little too teasing and nothing horrible. But at the same time, it made me angry because, I left them in charge of their little sister and they treated her poorly, not abusively or anything like that. Just, and she's like, yeah, I used to hate it when you leave because they would tease me really bad. So I go lock myself in my room. And that made me feel crap that we had apparently, when we would leave, it made her feel like she was abandoned. And I unloaded on both of the boys about how they were treating their sister. I mean, this is years past.
Right.
And I handled that poorly. I completely unloaded my anger on how they had treated their sister many years ago. But what happened after that is they both went to her and they all talked it out and they actually apologized and they were,
Well, I don't think that there's any parent on the planet that can't say that they've been in that moment. I don't think that there's any parent because parents are human beings.
Yeah.
That we make mistakes. We have our own wounds. We have our own issues. That's a normal thing. But again, when you went to them, and this is really important for the people pleasers of the world to hear this very clearly. When you went to them and apologized, you were only clearing yourself of the guilt and regret that you were feeling so that you no longer had to think about it. You were now releasing it. It wasn't going to take rent space anymore in your mind. When we're doing that to plead for forgiveness, there are many people in the world who will twist you like a pretzel now, knowing that that is your weakness. Yeah. So be aware that when we take, I understand that, but be aware that when we take accountability for things, the accountability has to come from us for us.
Yeah.
What the outside does with that is up to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And we're
out of time.
We're at 1 minute.
We're out of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you'd like to book your past life regression for this week, I'm doing them half price. You can contact me by phone or text at 262-573-7055 or at lisaschangingperceptions@gmail.com. It is only Monday through Friday this week while I'm on spring break.
And there you go. And we'll all be back next time. So have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and we'll see you later. So long, folks. Take care.
Yes, I know I'm still on the screen.
And we actually are off the air now. So long, folks. Have a wonderful time.